So you know somebody doesn't respect you. They listen to reply, not to be understood. They cut you off. They minimize what actually matters to you. They laugh at your boundaries, and then they call you sensitive when you try to hold the line. They show up late, they cancel last minute, forget the things you've told them, because in their world, your time, your energy, even your voice aren't a priority. They're just an option. You see, there are two kinds of people. Those who adjust when they realize they've actually hurt you, and those who expect you to adjust so they don't have to change. You don't need to be disrespected loudly to be disrespected deeply. Sometimes you'll see it. It's just in their tone, in their patterns, in the silence after you're known. Respect isn't what they say when they're watching. It's how they act when they think you'll tolerate it.
Own attitude towards the possibilities of peace, towards the Soviet Union, towards the course of the Cold War.
Art muscle. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me.
You see it on the bridge. Wait, how they get it? If the government had to change the screw in the bridge, they had to shut it down. They got state troopers out there. They got lanes closed. They got their strange machines. How did they get up there?
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Peace, blessings, glory, grace, and honor to the Most High. You know what today is. Do me a solid. Get your thinking caps on. Get comfortable. Relax a little bit. I got City in the studio. I will be turning the mic and the screen over to her. So give her a warm welcome. Like, share, repost. Let the people know that we are on. And have a good time. Bid you all adieu. Until later.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sydney. Don't mind me and this little guy. I'm hoping he'll fall asleep through the stream and he won't disturb our discussion today. Even though it looks like now I'm talking, he's like, oh, I'm gonna wake up. Anyway, I am here to talk about overconsumption and how it affects people, how it affects us, and how it affects our society as well as our environment. First, I wanted to define overconsumption. Overconsumption is, as it sounds, I'm trying to think of it without saying the word consumption, but you're basically taking in and using more than you could possibly ever use and more than you need. And this can apply to anything, or it can apply to most things, I should say. Obviously, one of the most commonly associated forms of overconsumption are physical objects, which can include toys, collectibles, clothing, bags, shoes, products, you name it. It also applies to food, intoxicants like drugs, alcohol, and sugar. Yes, I am categorizing sugar as an intoxicant because of how it affects our bodies. You get the same addiction response to sugar that you do with alcohol and drugs. It's just not as strong as some of the others. You can also overconsume high dopamine activities, overindulging in sports, dancing, clubbing, illegal behaviors, anything that really gives you a rush. Those can also be overconsumed. Also, socialization and like social media, those realms as well have the capacity to be overconsumed. Before I really get into this, I wanted to mention I'm going to be formatting this slightly different than usual. Usually I end with a poem, but I'm actually going to integrate a few poems into this because I feel like they demonstrate the topics that we're talking about in different facets. So I wanted to include a couple different poems throughout. So expect that to be coming. So overconsumption is, it may not seem like a problem, especially if you love shopping or like you make that a hobby and you're using that particular thing to uplift yourself, or it's just a habit you have. But overconsumption really has an effect on our psychology. It affects our behavior. It affects how we feel, interact with each other. It affects a wide variety of things that are important to us. So, I'm sorry, it is really hot outside, and we just got back from the pool, so my throat's really dry, and I don't want to go down and get water right now. But anyway, you'll have to ignore me clearing my throat all the time. So, yeah, overconsumption is a very prevalent problem right now. There's a lot of people that are addicted to one form of dopamine release or another, whether it's food, texting, social media, whatever activities they like to do. And it's become very easy to overindulge because of the society that we live in right now. Back in like 1800s, early 1900s, it took a lot of money, time, resources to produce things. But it was also a lot cheaper back then. So people were able to produce these things for if you compare the two generations monetarily, it was cheaper to produce goods back then, even though it wasn't as potentially high quality as it is today. Though you could argue like handmade stuff is probably higher quality, but I won't get into that. The difference between now and then is then it took longer to make things. It was harder to make things, harder to get the resources to make things, and also the distribution of whatever the things were. But today we have technology that enables things to be made and show up at houses within days. It doesn't, we mass produce things now where we make cheap goods at high quantities. We also have the capacity to ship things across the country in only a few days. We have the capacity to make thousands of items within a day or two. So we're able to create a great amount of stuff that people can buy. And access to technology goes hand in hand with this with the technological advances, because obviously as we got better at machinery, we also got better with our technology streamlining and access and all that fun stuff. So we now have a system where at our fingertips, we could buy whatever we want, whatever we could need. We could buy it from any country that we want. We're not going to be limited by amount of stuff that we can have. There were time periods where people had to ration, where we had environmental things affecting food, and there was nowhere else that produced it. So we have very improved access compared to what our ancestors saw even decades ago. Like 40 years ago, it was a completely different system. Another thing that affects this is social media. Not just because social media is yet another platform that we're always exposed to, for the most part, that sells goods to people, but you also have subtle salesmanship all over the internet. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, ads just on websites, on mobile games, on actual video game. Like there's even people that have advertising a TV on their fridge. Like we are in a society where we're bombarded by more ads, more please buy my stuff than ever before in history. Back then you'd only get like the vendor that went from door to door, or if you went to like a street thing or a specific shop. But now literally anywhere you can find advertisements to buy stuff. And a lot of it is covert too. Where, like, for example, influencers, they don't tell you that they're showing sponsored products. But if you look at, like, let's say a makeup tutorial, all of them happen to be the same brand. And if I know women don't do that. They have like 7 different brands that they use for their makeup and like mix and match based on what works for them. And so we have all of these sponsored posts as well that are not obvious they're selling. And because of this celebrity culture, the desire to be rich, there's, I don't remember what the official term is called, but like the proximity effect, where we feel like if we act like the people and dress like the people, then we will become them and we'll get their lifestyle. But fortunately, that's not how it works. Just hanging out with rich people doesn't make you rich. While the connections can be beneficial, just hanging out with somebody and dressing like somebody isn't going to make you have access to that particular life. So yeah, it's we live in a very, very different society than we did a couple generations ago. And that's affecting our consumption habits, because when you pair together easier to make goods, cheaper to make goods, easier and cheaper to get the goods to people, faster ways to get them to people, and also crazy quantity and what's the word? Like there's thousands of things, thousands of different choices, different types of things, different version. Like just go to a toothpaste aisle. I watched a video recently of somebody going to the toothpaste aisle and being like, so this one makes your teeth 50% whiter, but you could also get this one that makes your skin or your teeth 200% whiter. And then there's this one that's 100% whiter, but then you also get this whitening stuff. So we have that, like, and oftentimes a lot of these options aren't even different than the mainstream options. They're just rebranded. So yeah, we're being sold stuff from everywhere, of everything, anywhere you go. So as a result, we have a society that is highly, highly addicted to consumption. And as I said, while I'll most specifically be talking about physical objects, it does still apply to drugs, alcohol, and all the other stuff that are dopamine triggering. Oh, is he asleep? Oh, he's almost asleep. Cool. I'll be able to put him down and stop swaying in front of the camera soon. So one of the, let me see. Okay. So one of the impacts of overconsumption on human behavior is it can cause basically all the same symptoms as addiction behavior. Overconsumption is, in my opinion, I don't know if it's traditionally labeled as that in the psychology community, but I definitely see it as a form of addiction. There's a lot of reasons somebody might have an overconsumption problem, but I think overall, once you get into an overconsumption cycle, it is a form of addiction. Some of those signs include an uncontrollable urge to shop, excessive spending beyond one's means, purchasing items with no purpose or utility, feelings of shame or neglect after a shopping spree, neglecting other responsibilities in favor of shopping, negative personal relationships as a result of shopping behavior, financial instability as a result of shopping behavior, and effects to your home and your organization and your space as a result of overconsumption as well. Filling up your space with stuff that you don't need, blocking hallways, potentially filling up pantries, making your life way more stressful than it has to be. You also have some of the traditional addiction symptoms such as anxiety, social isolation, depression. Social isolation, depression, and anxiety usually comes from the shame that you feel for having this problem and hiding it, trying to hide it from other people that you're having this issue. You can have damaged relationships, damaged jobs, lost jobs. A lot of people that go through overconsumption are dealing with financial strain or ruin because of their overconsumption habits. Oftentimes, when you have a habit of shopping, particularly online shopping, it's very, very easy to make the choice to buy the thing before you ever experience the logic behind the purchase. And so it's very easy for people with an overconsumption habit to spend their money quite dramatically. Just a personal example, I have bipolar disorder, and before I found a medication that actually worked for me, I used to have my depression episodes weren't that bad, but I had really severe manic episodes. And 1 year, because of, let's see if I can put them down. Oh, yes, success. Okay, hopefully he'll sleep through the rest of the stream. So yeah, I used to have really bad manic episodes, and after I had my daughter, as my hormones were kind of going back to normal, I had a really severe manic episode, and I ended up spending around $3,000 in like 2 weeks. And a lot of this stuff was completely useless. I don't even have most of that stuff anymore. I have one. That's not in here. I always say this one. I bought a vintage vacuum from like the 70s or 80s. Or it might have even been older because it's a wooden Bissell like roller vacuum. That I was like, oh, that would be so cool to have for whatever reason. I also bought a ton of clothes, jewelry. I bought a bunch of like vintage tins and stuff like that. Yeah. So sometimes it doesn't even make sense. If you're really deep into an overconsumption addiction cycle, you will definitely be buying things or consuming things that are nonsensical, or this isn't the time, this isn't the place, but you still have that compulsion to do that thing. So this first poem is called Restless Hunger, and I wrote it to kind of exemplify the feelings of addiction. That sensation where you just really, really want to do that thing, but no, you can't. In this poem, they fall to it, but yeah. So this is called Restless Hunger. Oh, the nibbling, the biting, the gnawing, angry lions. Of course. Angry lions and wolves pawing at the gates between above and below, craving so badly to consume more maddeningly, to satiate the hungriness turning inside. Taking in just leaves space for more, licking away at the fur coats and ivory stone, hoping to quench the beckoning, to quell the bemoaning. You desperately lap at the edge of your own reflection, pleading to reclaim your base condition, ripples flowing across your distorted self, but instead of heeding unneedingness, you lead the beast to its own feast. Tenderly trembling, you succumb, helpless, to the pull of a predator, into the labyrinth, into the lair. Do you dare to resist, or do you let it persist? And so this poem, as I said, I wrote to kind of exemplify that feeling. And it can be extremely overwhelming when people have a consumption addiction. it can feel as strong as an addiction to alcohol or drugs sometimes. You can, I've seen people have panic attacks in stores just because of that sensation. I've also seen people go on some crazy spending binges where they drop thousands of dollars on like lots and lots of stuff that they don't need or don't want. And even they'll walk by the window, they'll tell themselves not to do it as they walk in the store and do the thing. So it can be incredibly powerful. And if you are trying to break an addiction, you'll need community around you. People cannot break addictions on their own, no matter how much they try. Of course, some people do cold turkey it, but there's still going to be people around them that are supporting them, helping them, urging them along. Because when people quit cold turkey, that doesn't mean they never feel the compulsion or addiction feelings anymore. It just means that they have been able to so far overcome those feelings. And so if you have really strong sensations of symptoms like this, it's important to seek people out. Go see a doctor, go see a psychologist, go talk to your friends, talk to your family, let them know that you're struggling with this, because hiding it only makes it worse. When you hide an addiction, you become more and more shameful of the fact that you do the thing. And part of the process of recovering from addiction is accepting that you have a problem in the first place. So it's really, really important to talk to other people. That way it grounds you in reality and you get to understand, one, the consequences people foresee for you for continuing with whatever addiction it is. But also it shows that people care about you. It shows that people want to be there and walk you through these difficult situations. So it's important to reach out to people. Because as I said, it can cause damaged relationships. If you cut yourself off from somebody, you can eventually work your way to cutting them off completely, because you're so afraid for that person to see your house, to see whatever behavior that you're doing. And again, as somebody I go through this now. I still have an overconsumption habit. I've gotten it more under control. Like, I'm better at making reasonable choices. But I still have I of course don't want to call it an addiction, but it is a mild addiction to buying stuff, especially clothes and jewelry. That is my thing. I also have had a thing for like stuffed animals and animal shaped stuff. So it takes work, I promise. And again, it is an uphill battle with the world that we live in. There is endless, like you can't avoid it. You really can't, unless you live in like some really tiny town. There's really no way to, and even then you still have the internet most likely. So it's a very, very difficult challenge to overcome sometimes, but it is worth it because it improves your life. It improves your space. It improves your ability to be a good worker and friend, family member, parent. Because when we indulge in these habits, especially when they affect our emotions and affect our time usage, it can really snowball and impact everyone around us. So it's really, really important to rein in those issues and find somebody there. This kind of rolls into the next poem that I wrote called Presence. And this one I wrote it like blanket to my friends. It wasn't one friend specifically, but I wrote it to my friends because I have a terrible habit of disappearing. I like, not permanently, but I'll like drop off for a while because I'll be in my head or whatever. But I also don't invite my friends over very often because I have too much stuff right now. And so it's hard for me to keep my house clean. And it's embarrassing. I don't want people in my house to see that. And I know that people live that way. Like, I'm not the only person on the planet with a messy house. And it's definitely not like something you'd see on Hoarders Buried Alive on TV. But it still affects my relationships with people. It still makes me less willing to have people at our house. So we can't do like group barbecues and group play dates and stuff. Like, it has to be out of the house because I'm just not comfortable having people see my stuff. And that is a real consequence of having that overconsumption problem. I've been in a decluttering cycle, and one of the things that I keep telling myself as I declutter is, would you rather have this or would you rather have relationships? Because often that is what you're choosing. When you're when you choose to shop, when you choose the stuff, you are choosing inanimate objects, and you are not choosing yourself. You're not choosing your children, your financial future, your friends. It affects a lot of different areas, and people don't realize it until they're fully involved in it and are seeing these losses snowball as they lose control of all of that. Because oftentimes when you have overconsumption, they try to control the situation, they try to hide it from people, but after a while, it becomes impossible to hide because it's starting to leak into your behavior, your finances, and all that stuff. So that being said, it affects how you interact with people. It affects your willingness. It makes people socially isolated if it progresses too far. And so I wrote this poem, as I said, to my friends, addressing this and kind of explaining to them, like, I'm not hanging out with you, because I don't care about you. It's because of me. So again, this is called Presence. I said I would be there. I said I would call. I promise you, this time I will. After I finish grocery shopping, after I finish the dishes, after I finish the laundry, after I finish tidying up, after I finish paying these bills, after I finish mending, after I finish these projects I have collected in preparation for someday. I said I would be there. I said I would visit you. I promise you, this time I will. I just have to finish fixing the sink, fixing the floors, fixing the roof, fixing the car, fixing myself. I just have to sort out these dishes, papers, clothes in place of these traumas. I just have to get my world straight, so maybe my mind can follow too. I need to fix everything. I need to be perfect because I need you to love me. I need you to love me before I can let you in, because you can't know that I am broken. You can't know that this is the reason I was never there for you, because I was never there for me. When I said I'd be there, I wasn't. When I said I'd call, I didn't. When I said I'd visit, I never showed. When I promised you, I broke it. This time was the last time, because I announced with my silence that you were nothing, with my absence that you weren't worth my time. Though my coldness was my own loneliness, my own anxiety, my own pain, I do not deserve you, because I am imperfect. I broke you, all because I tried to be everything perfectly for you. I showed up as only a shadow, and now, as I sit among my vapid collections, my sad projects, my cobwebbed home, my empty soul, I wish I had been there. I wish I had called. I wish I could make you just one more promise, just to show you that I can keep it. This time, I am sorry, for I am now left with only me. So that one I wrote to exemplify the feeling of knowing your stuff, your collections, your buying habits have gotten in the way of the relationships that you build with other people. When you spend so much time focused on something that's giving you a dopamine rush, it de-incentivizes you from even seeking out social experiences. They have found through research that social media emulates the human contact. It basically like makes the brain think that they're socializing with people without giving them the benefits of actually socializing with people in person. Because people forget that interacting with other people isn't just words on paper, isn't just words out of our mouth. Like there's body language, there's subliminal like facial expressions, there's like all of the, like even their smell, their presence, that affects how our brain responds to interactions. And the brain can't quite tell the difference between in-person interactions and not in-person interactions. And the reason why this is problematic is because you drain your social battery on things that don't actually benefit you socially. Whether we like it or not, the texting and phone calls are a little bit different, but specifically like texting, emails and stuff, it's so impersonal that it really doesn't benefit the body. Like your mind can't really tell that you have friends, and it still is going to feel alone, even if you have 1,000 of them online. And so when you spend a lot of your time on addiction behaviors, you're taking away that time that you could be socializing, and you're affecting your let's see, round 2. See how it goes. You are also affecting your dopamine when you frequently. So there's a rat experiment. I'm blanking on the name of the researcher, but he was. Let me see. He was testing addiction. Sugar. It was. Who are you? I wanted to get the name of the original researcher, but I can't. I don't want to keep searching for it online. Anyways, there was a really fundamental research that happened, I think, in the 50s or 60s, something like that. And they basically gave rats they could choose between drinking sugary water or like, I think they like got zapped every time they drank it. But basically like they were so addicted that they died. They died just focused on getting that sugar experience. And let's see. I think it might have been that they were giving them like sugar water constantly, and then they took it away, and then they like died because they didn't. Oh man, I wish I had written down the name of the actual study, because there have been a lot of studies since. So there have been tests studying their fats and fruit sugars and its effect on anxiety. Like there's been a lot of experiments lately, and I mean, sadly, it does show this. I won't talk too much about sugar because it's kind of its own arena, and I probably will actually do an episode just on sugar. But yeah, they've tested rats with fats and sugars and all sorts of other stuff. But they basically found that sugar is so addictive. It's almost up there with like cocaine and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a really strong, it has a strong impact on our brain. And as I was kind of saying earlier, it gives us a hit of dopamine, and this hit of dopamine is what our brain finds addicting. That's why anything that induced dopamine, whether it be shopping, food, or whatever, can all be addicting, because your brain wants the pleasure. Your brain associates pleasure with survival and pain with not survival. So when we are engaging in dopamine activities all day long, you're on social media, you're consuming sugar, you are maybe going on a run, maybe you're buying a purse or some shoes or whatever, and then you're talking to your friends, and then you get a coffee. All of these things affect your dopamine. And as you kind of hype up the amount of dopamine that you consume every day, your body becomes less and less receptive to it. Same thing. It's literally the reason why addiction becomes less effective over time. Like you have to use more and more to get the same effect, because your body has gotten used to that amount of dopamine and it doesn't have the same effect anymore. And this is why it is so hard for people to break addictions. Like once you kind of create that neural pathway, it's really, really hard to break that pathway. And so even years down the line, people can relapse, and people will relapse multiple times over and over again, because of the body's need for dopamine. Back in the old days when we were all in trees, dopamine let animals know that like this fruit is safe, this activity is safe, you're interacting with your animal peers, which also is pleasurable because being an outcast was highly stressful. And so when you were feeling included in the group, you felt safe. And so you get dopamine from that. So it's deeply ingrained. It's a biological response. And so that's why it's so hard to break addiction, because it is a human response to stimuli in general. And we're not going to be able to get that to stop. And so we ourselves have to make the conscious choice to stop allowing that dopamine signal to decide what behavior we do next. And the deeper you are into your addiction, the stronger that feeling is going to be. And so it can be much harder to break that addiction. I've also heard, I don't exactly know the mechanics behind it, but I know if you have an addiction, you stop consuming, but then you go back to the addiction, it often is harder to break your addiction the second, third, fourth time, because your brain is basically learning how to overcome your own behaviors and revert you back to that addicted state. Another reason why these addictions can be so hard to break, as I mentioned earlier, it's everywhere. Like it's very hard because you're like driving down the freeway, you'll see signs for alcohol, you'll see signs for shopping, you'll see you'll pass the shopping mall, you'll pass through the shopping center. Like there's so many different things that trigger specific addictions that it can be really hard. And oftentimes people will pile on multiple addictions together. Like very few people have just one addiction. Usually people are addicted to sugar, social media, and shopping, or working out really hard, taking pre-workout caffeine, whatever. Like there's people often couple their addictions together, and they kind of develop together. And unfortunately, people who have had an unstable childhood, or even trauma in their adolescent to adulthood, that can trigger a deep need for addiction to avoid the pain that they experience. Because, as I was saying earlier, pain is a sign of danger. Pleasure is a sign of like survival. We can use pleasure to block pain or to cover up pain. And so that's why you often see kids who have been traumatized, oftentimes as adults turn to drugs, or they turn to gambling, or they end up getting into high-risk activities. If people are, what was I going to say? Oh, like if you experience adult trauma, you might start drinking. You might start doing drugs again. You might start doing shopping. But every Hoarders show, I've watched all the whole series. Almost every single one of them, their hoarding was triggered by the death of a family member that was close to them, whether it was their husband, their kid, their sister, whatever, mother, or two, they were SA'd, or their house burned down and they lost everything. All of which are traumas, and all of that triggered people to shop, because sometimes it's used as a distraction, sometimes it's used to give us a dopamine boost when we're feeling upset, when we're feeling sad, and then some of it is a form of anxiety, like you're trying to overcompensate for something, as would be the case for the people in the fire. Like they have lost things that were deeply important to them, and so they're trying to replace that feeling by buying a bunch of stuff that they find cool. So overconsumption is very, very frequently linked with trauma, because the overconsumption is meant to overcome that trauma. It's all in a very, very minor example, inert example. When people are nervous, they use alcohol as a social lubricant. If you're highly anxious, drinking alcohol will calm you down. Or same with certain drugs and stuff like that. They will relax people, if you know what I'm talking about. And even that sensation makes it addicting. And if you are experiencing or have experienced trauma, you're going to sit with those, you're going to indulge in those feelings, because it takes you away from that deep pain that you have. And one of the really, really key ways that you break these addictions is to confront that pain head on. And for some people, that is incredibly hard, especially if it's a deep trauma. Sometimes people don't even want to change or refuse to notice that there's even a problem in the first place, because they're so ingrained in whatever this overconsumption habit was. So it can be incredibly painful for people to peel back the layers and expose why they have that addiction in the first place. And sometimes people don't even know. But from what I've understood, from what I've seen, from what I've read, it's very often trauma that triggers people to turn to these behaviors. It's very rarely born out of just personality trait. Although there are like certain ADHD, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, they're high dopamine seeking individuals. And so they have a harder time with this, because they have a hard time managing the hormones that are in their body. And so it's a hormonal response on top of existing patterns. So yeah, where was I going with that? So addictive behaviors can really linger for a long time because of how connected it is to our primate brain, essentially. Our as it used to be called, the reptilian brain, which is all of our reflex type behaviors. Because that's one of the things with addiction. Another aspect that makes it so hard is it can make you mindlessly partake, and so you don't even realize that you have given in until after you've already used whatever or done the thing. And unfortunately, it also kind of compounds on each other, where people will feel the shame of their addiction and then they'll overconsume more to hide the fact that they're ashamed of their addiction. So it definitely goes in a circle. And as I called it earlier, it's a cycle. Even with not recently, but one of the things that I've found as well is decluttering itself can become an addiction, where people get addicted to the dopamine rush of clearing out a space, and then they immediately fill it back up with stuff because then they get a second dopamine hit from buying the stuff. And then another dopamine hit when they get rid of it. So using, so even getting rid of the stuff can serve as its own form of addiction. And so things that you wouldn't normally think of can also manifest as an addiction. Let me see. No. There is. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about before I get into the final poem is the other impacts that it has. We've talked all about people, relationships, their homes. I forgot to mention, if you have enough of a consumption problem, it's going to fill your home up. You might have unsafe spaces. You might not have access to tabletops or counters or doorways to your house. Like, it can become so severe that your house is not usable anymore. It's not safe. I've seen people with a severe hoarding issue to the point that their house was literally collapsing in on itself from the weight of the stuff. So it's very much an issue to every facet of your life. So the last area that it impacts is the environment. I talk about this every episode, basically, of how many impacts we have on the planet. But in my opinion, I think overconsumption is one of the biggest problems, because it is behind every problem that we have right now. Or not every problem, but it's responsible for pollutants. It's responsible for carbon dioxide release. It is responsible for habitat destruction, because they need to make space for the factories. They need to pillage the resources, the trees, the water, whatever the thing is. It also causes the extinction of creatures because they're over-consuming things to be used as products. They're also using the land for agriculture, which is one of the biggest, I think, cows alone cover like 25% of the land space in the world, which is wild if you think about it. All right. Round 3. Back's starting to hurt, so hopefully he stays asleep for this last 10 minutes. So it's deeply, deeply destructive to our planet. Today, we lose about 10 million hectares of forest annually. As I said, because of agriculture, there's an increased demand for commercial crops. High consumption happens with people of affluence most often. When you are highly wealthy, you have access to all sorts of stuff that other people wouldn't have access to. But then you also have that added pressure where you have to fit in, you have to have the fanciest house, the nicest clothes, whatever. And the way that trends change, there's a rapid, like, this is in now, this is in now, this is in now, this is in now. Now I have to get rid of these things. I have to get rid of those things. The people that are highly wealthy have the opportunity, the ability, and the pressure to buy excessively. And like, what's his name? Nicolas Cage has a full Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton in his house. Come on. So yeah, it's definitely a huge problem with the highly wealthy. People with income levels at the top 10% of the world emit 50% of global carbon dioxide emissions, and the bottom 50% of global income earners emit only 7% of global carbon dioxide emissions. So if you guys are lower income, middle income, don't feel bad about using your cars and using plastic and using all this stuff, because it's not you, it's them. They're trying to convince us that it's our fault because they're the ones supplying it, and because we're buying it, it's automatically our fault. But that is not true. It needs to stop at the source. It needs to stop with all of these people pushing all of these products on us that we don't need, don't care about us, is bad for us, has chemicals in it, has all sorts of issues. But they would rather make us spend money because then they get more of our money. So do not believe the myth that we as a whole are responsible for this climate disaster. It is not us. It is the wealthy. It is the giant corporations. So don't feel bad. But it still is affecting our environment. It pollutes our air. It contributes microplastics to the ocean. It releases chemicals and stuff into everything, the air, the soil, the plants. It also kills animals and takes land from them. Going back to the plastic, 400 million tons of plastic are produced annually, and 6 million tons of plastic end up in the water. People consume nearly twice as many goods today than people did 50 years ago. We also do not have a reuse, recycle type energy anymore. Back in the 50s, people would repair clothes until they became rags. And then they'd use the rags. But today we're like, oh, there's a tear in the towel. I'm going to throw all of them away and get a whole new set. Like, people can be very, very over consumptive today. As I said, social media has made constant consumption very popular. And it increases impulse spending, which is another aspect. Our impulse control with dopamine activities can be pretty bad if we're not practicing impulse control. It is something that you have to work on. It is a muscle, just like patience is a muscle, just like, that's what patience is. It's limiting your impulses and ignoring your impulses, even when you want to do something right now. And so it's something that you have to really work on if you're trying to break addictions, is ignoring your impulses, and you have to start acting out of logic rather than emotions. In 2025 alone, online shopping totaled $6.42 trillion. That's a lot of money. So yeah, overconsumption is a huge, huge problem for the environment. It's a huge problem for climate change, and it's a huge problem for us. It's overfilling our landfill. It's causing our air to be less healthy. And it's also making us feel bad. Like, people are feeling guilty because they think that they're responsible for damaging the planet. And again, it's not us. They're supplying us fast fashion. They're making us replace our electronics regularly. They're making it so we end up wasting food. They're encouraging single-use materials. They influence us to buy all sort of products and make us think that if you buy this thing, then you'll become this thing. That's not how it works. So it is not your fault. I will keep going back to that. That is one of my podiums that I like to stand on. Overconsumption is not our fault. Climate change is not entirely our fault. We do contribute, but we aren't to blame. So yeah. With that, I have one last poem to read. This is a poem that I wrote about shopping and the pull of shopping. They have made our environment conducive to addictive behaviors, even down to the marketing. They choose colors that make you feel hungry. They choose imagery that make you feel like you need to buy the thing and feel jealous of the people in the picture, even though they're all just actors. There's so much psychology that goes behind websites and online shopping places and stuff to make you buy things. The 4 payments option, or the Klarna and all these no credit hit type lending places, and also all of the ads and all of the statements that are made, all of the celebrities they recruit, all of this is to make you shop, is to trigger the unconscious inside you and make you make decisions that you wouldn't ordinarily make if you were thinking clearly. So again, even shopping problems are not your fault, because they purposely manufacture the environment around us to make it easier for us to shop. One-click shopping, you save your payment method. It remembers you from last time. It saves your cart from last time. It offers you discounts when you have something sitting in your cart. So many different methods. So because of how much of an impact it has, I wanted to write this. I wrote this piece on the feeling of online shopping and the impact that it has, and the effect that it has kind of on society. And you'll hear it. It kind of covers the whole gamut. So this one is called Shopaholic. We see you there, winking, staring intently, begging unrelentingly, asking discontentedly to interact so gently. Your sexy little square, filling with your tastes, you feed the need to waste. As your timers trigger haste, coercing every click, poisoning our knack for nicks with mistaken slips of our fingertips. Fueling self-fulfilling trips, stocking up for kicks, revisiting each glowing front to see what changed, hope to rearrange, prod to disengage. Weighing 100 goods, bathed promisingly in white light, laced with intoxicant faces, on drugged up hunts, on the run, for fun. We let ourselves get pulled in, to the screen, to the sin, to renew ourselves, to arrest our lech, to buy afresh. Eyes glued, painful pupils stitched like tacky spider webs. We stick to purposeful glitches. We stay connected, addicted to devils and demons demure, tight and secure, pupils dilated, mind obscured. We stay indebted, we stay embedded in a life of belonging, in a life of faux longing, in a character flaw feature show. Unspoken theologies, private insecurities, highlighted peculiarities, passion-baked activities, when you replace veins of your truth with idols of youth, with vices and roots, with fables from fruits, tables of ruthless pirates ruling the roost. You sell yourself, you buy for wealth, you buy your mind, false pride, love lies, more weight on your thighs. Your lot is your load, free your abode. Fund not your enemies with your space. Instead, you must place your trust in grace. It's time that you leave the race. We must feature the search and seizure of our original values and reasons, reject the seasonal treason, respect the trees and the terrain, bury the trenches they seek to deepen, with lying and buying to solve, dollars to dissolve, problems designed in the walls, faking the resolve to revolve, their ethics around authenticity, funding the tactics that time just absolves, melting down crimes into tangible assets, secretly shifting societal facets, green feeding greed, meaning in need. Where are the real leaders we seek? Instead, we are left aimlessly seeking esteem in the fumbling lights of dystopia's gleam, laurel wreaths atop graves of the YOLO elites, leeching their preachings beyond graves onto screens, stealing our own ownership ways through our own acquisition, through our own deep inhibition, through our antique disposition, the urge for collection, to show off, for connection. Humans will yearn for recollection. Humans will yearn for need, for possession. You must release yourself from obsession. Accept the need to fit in without the credit hit ping. For capitalists and their tricks will tempt you until you end this mortal trip. So that was again to talk about the ins and outs of online shopping and how society is fed to us through our wallets. And again, the parts that I want to really leave you with ingrained in your head. One, it's not your fault. It's never your fault. It's the society that was built around us, though you do have to take responsibility for your choices, for your actions. Because even though the world is set up against you, you're still the one that has to make the decisions within it. And lastly, if you have an addiction, if you struggle with overconsumption, reach out to people, reach out to psychologists. Don't be ashamed it's much better to get help when it's still manageable than to wait until you're about to lose your house or you're about to lose your job or you're living on the streets. So make sure that you don't isolate yourself. If you are dealing with overconsumption problems, it is much easier to do this with a friend than it is to do it by yourself. You can have somebody to check in with, an accountability buddy, so you both are limiting your access to social media and stuff like that, or whatever your addiction is. And they can also walk you through, give you advice. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why you want to include people in your journey. And so I highly, highly recommend opening yourself up, allowing yourself to be vulnerable so other people can step in and help you, be there for you, offer support, offer strength. So keep that in mind, that you are not alone. I honestly would go as far as saying pretty much everybody has an addiction problem of some kind. Whether some are more beneficial than others, like you can have an addiction to reading or to vegetables, but usually it's the ones that are not as safe that are the ones that we focus heavily on. So an addiction to vegetables and reading is pretty good. So but yeah, I really hope that this was educational and helpful. I also hoped that this quelled any anxieties for people that might be dealing with this, because I really want to hone in that this is something that a lot of people deal with, and it's very hard for people to cope with the idea of having an addiction, all the consequences that come with it. And so it's important to get this information out there, get it normalized, so that way people feel more comfortable coming forward and getting help for a very common condition. So with that, somebody is hungry, I think. So I hope you enjoyed the poem. I hope you enjoyed the information and learned something new. I will be back on Friday, or I will see you guys next Wednesday for my next episode. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good night.
Own attitude towards the possibilities of peace, towards the Soviet Union, towards the course of the Cold War.
Our muscle. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me.
You see it on the bridge. Wait, how they get it? If the government had to change the screw in the bridge, they had to shut it down. They got state troopers out there. They got lanes closed. They got their strange machines. How did they get up there?